Hello and welcome to the CFB Super Show. I am your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85. I am flying solo this morning like we do on the Q&A show. This is the show for you guys to ask your questions before the College Football DFS slate. We're roughly 58 minutes to lock. I am going to be answering questions that have been given to me from Twitter, the Discord, here live in the chat. We'll rehash some of the thoughts that Jake and I had from Thursday, anything that's developed over the last 36 hours that might have changed, talk about my core a little bit more, and then, of course, any injury news or late-breaking news that happens. We'll go into that as well. So glad to have you guys here. Hopefully you had a chance to check me out last night, breaking down the college basketball slate. The early slate is just now started. We've got college sports galore happening. There's just a lot to do and a lot of things happening with this grind. All right. Man, there's just a lot going on. I have 2 coffees in and I'm ready to roll. Primarily focused on DraftKings as always, but ask your FanDuel questions as well if you do have them. I'll go over any PrizePicks stuff. Of course, the board has changed. Putting in some prop bets, some overall bets, doing that. So we will have some, bets that I like that you guys can tail if you wish. But just starting out, let's just go into and start it with ownership. That's a good place to start, I think. At quarterback, looking at ownership, now I look at, 2, 3, 4 sites that actually project it along with my own interpretation and do an aggregation and an average. So right now, quarterback, number 1 highest owned quarterback on DraftKings, looking like Tanner Mordecai, somewhere in the realm of 35 to 40%, which is quite high for a slate of this magnitude. Single entry, high dollar, and cash games. He is pretty much the QB1 that everybody's going to have. You do have Jaden Daniels coming in as the second highest owned on DraftKings, 8.5 and 8.1. That's going to sink a lot of salary for people. KJ Jefferson comes in at third, assuming that he plays. That's going to be news that I track throughout the next 30 minutes of the show. Well, I'll be checking Twitter. If you guys happen to see that before I do, please go ahead and post it in the chat, and we'll definitely get to that. And just, big news there because if he plays, a very great price. He's going to be able to do some damage there. If he doesn't, then we've got Malik Hornsby as an option. Rocket Sanders becomes a pretty solid running back option because they'll give it to him a lot. And offensively, that's going to be a fun game. Next up, we have Hendon Hooker, who comes into things, doesn't ever get overlooked. Like I mentioned on Thursday, no matter the slate size, opponent, whatever, he's always kind of hovering in that like 15 to 20% range. 8.3, another quarterback in the low 8s. He's kind of rounding out, the 4th spot there. And then it's a bunch of Michael Pratt, Hunter Deckers, cheap guys, Catravius Marsh for USF, if he is going to be the actual quarterback there, with Bohannon out. Marsh is only 5K, gets a nice matchup against SMU where he might be able to utilize his legs a little bit. He has thrown in the last 2 games 34 and 22 attempts. In his last 3 appearances, he does have 6 touchdowns. So Marsh is an option there at 5K if you want to skimp and go cheap. So those are your higher owned quarterbacks there. At running back, the highest owned projected right now by a million-mile march is Tyler Levine of SMU. Went into it in the article and talked about it on Thursday. SMU running backs are one tricky thing to try to figure out. Every time you come into it, you'll think, Velton Gardner, he's the guy. He was chalky that, slate. What was it? I think it was week 4, maybe a couple weeks ago. He came into it and he got 9 carries and got out carried. Didn't really play that much. Wasn't a good play and ended up busting hard. TJ McDaniel is in the mix still. McDaniel, he only had 1 carry last week. It wouldn't surprise me to see him hit 20 this week for whatever reason. They still have the young, future stud, and at least in my opinion, Kamar Wheaton, whose carries have been trending up slightly, more like 5 to 8 instead of 1 to 2. He is a total stud and is going to be. And then, of course, Tyler Levine sits there at top, and he's the flavor of the week. He's only 3-4. Does it feel like a trap? Oh, 100%. But there's so many pay-ups at quarterback, running back, wide receiver that we like. We've got to play some value and get it in there. Levine's coming off a 150-yard performance in which he scored a touchdown, caught a couple passes, back-to-back weeks of 25-plus fantasy points. The week prior against Tulsa, 72 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has over 40 carries in those past 2 games, over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. A lot of volume there. That's theoretically he's going to do well. He's not going to Richard Reese us. Trey Siggers, likely not going to play, but we just have to be aware that there is the opportunity, there is the potential for us to be very, very upset with the Levine play. Mordecai and Levine together, it's not bad. It's not horrible. Playing a running back with a quarterback in college is definitely a viable strategy, more so than maybe in the NFL. And I know a lot of people have a problem with it. So I was wondering what the ownership on Levine might look like. But as of right now, it looks like they're both going to be super, super high. And a lot of people thinking that Siggers is going to be done for the rest of the year. I do, digging around, that sounded like they wanted to get Kamar Wheaton some more touches, somewhere between 10 to 12. That's a lot of message board talk. That could mean absolutely nothing. I just want you guys to be aware. In tournaments, fading Levine for Kamar Wheaton, they're basically the same price, could be a big time power move if Wheaton is the one that scores the touchdowns or he's hot to start and Levine fumbles or something, theoretically. Wheaton could absolutely dominate at, 2%. And win you a big GPP. So approach it that way and look out, because there's going to be tilt galore in this SMU game. I have a really strong intuition about it. Their running back situation has been awful all season long, just from a DFS standpoint. Second is Jahmyr Gibbs. That's actually my number one running back. I love Mancy, give me more coffee. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. It's a high price, 8-7. That's definitely tough. The matchup against that Ole Miss defensive front is just prime time. I went into it on the show on Thursday, went into it, the article. Running backs are just continually gashing them. They're not, they're not getting to the quarterback. They're not blowing up plays. The running backs are just running right through them. Tank Bigsby hit him for 180 a couple weeks ago. Devin Ashane, RIP him. Not that he's dead. He's just not going to play today. It sounds like for a later slate, 138 yards. Josh Williams of LSU had 80 yards. Oh, wow, 80 yards, that's it. Well, that's a committee backfield. Typically there's like 3 to 4 guys getting touches there. So Gibbs is going to rush for 100-plus yards today. Very confident in that. He also adds value as a pass cut catcher. We know that. He has the capability of catching 5, 6, 7 passes. He's going to be a big-time play. I'm going to find the salary for him. My man Jake, my co-host and partner in crime for FTN CFB, he's going a little bit cheaper at running back. I think that's viable as well. Like Donovan Edwards, Levine, and guys like that. He's not looking to pay up. I'm on the opposite end. I love my running backs. I love the pay ups when I can get them. Since I usually like to talk about 4 running backs like we did last week, I think it's fine to do today, although I am leaning 2 quarterbacks, which I'll get into in a second. But Gibbs is far and away the RB1 for me personally. Third in ownership is Blake Corum. Again, another expensive guy, Corum, Gibbs. If people are going the route of Corum, Gibbs, Rashee Rice, Tanner Mordecai, Jaden Daniels, like that's going to be really tough to fit. You're going to be playing a lot of value guys. So I love Corum. I think, yes, Nebraska, it's a blowout. He could have 150 and 3 by halftime. We've seen him have multiple touchdowns at halftime. I think him and Donovan Edwards will both do quite well. You do get a $3K discount to Edwards, so I get where Jake's head is at for that play. Definitely don't hate it. I just want to take Corum because I'm getting that sure thing. We're going to have to take some shots with value, some icky value, if you will, and I want that sure thing 25 to 30 fantasy points out of Corum. Chase Brown comes in there, rounding out, about 4th or 5th. Against Purdue, I think that Illinois will have an opportunity to air it out a bit. I think Tommy DeVito is an interesting spot to throw the football. He's there. And then we have Donovan Edwards, Katerivius Norton, and RJ Harvey kind of rounding out the rest of that group, with Logan Diggs not far behind as your kind of 5th guy. Norton is in play if Jarrell Brock sits, going up against Oklahoma State. That's a putrid defense. We know that. Norton is sitting there at 3.9. There's going to be a lot of Levine Norton lineups out there. Playing two pay-up running backs is just not going to be something that we're going to see very much today, I don't believe, with the way that these lineups are shaking out. So for me, I might be a little contrarian paying up at running back for multiple spots. So we'll have to just, see what's up here with Jarrell Brock. I don't see any updated news as of right now, but I'll definitely keep checking. If you guys see it again, like I said, make sure that you pop it in the chat there and let the group know. And then going to wide receiver, very, very clearly Rashee Rice season there. He could approach somewhere between 45 to 50% in single entry stuff. Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka are also pulling some pretty decent ownership from what I'm seeing. Ohio State's, passing game, getting it going against Indiana makes a lot of sense. They're expensive. They're a luxury. Not going to be able to get him. Xavier Hutchinson is in that group. He's expensive. He's a luxury, but it looks like Xavier Weaver behind Rashee Rice is going to be one of the highest owned wide receivers, Rice and Weaver. And then you have it with guys like Keyshawn Butte, RJ Maryland from SMU, Dylan Goffney from SMU, Jordan Curley from SNU. All these value SMU guys are kind of, in the 5, 6, and 7 spot for highest ownership. And then wedged in there a bit, somewhat maybe surprisingly, Ja'Cory Brooks from Alabama. Not looking to take any Alabama wide receivers today. Me personally, there's quite a bit of them. They're not as solid as we're used to in past seasons. I'm just going to play Gibbs, but that gives you an idea of where the ownership is going to be coming there on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's a little bit different story because the slates, goes further into the day. There on FanDuel, you want Drake May by far. You want, Michael Penix, in my opinion, by far. You want Rome Odunze by far. At running back, there, Jahmyr Gibbs as well at 9.4. Like, those are the guys that I want in my FanDuel lineup. As far as like where we're going to find some value, there's RJ Harvey at 6.7 on FanDuel. That's an intriguing price for him going up against Tulane. If you want a value quarterback, you can look at Jackson Dart, although it's not a great spot. JT Daniels is only 7.8 on FanDuel going against Oklahoma. I love that DVP. Sign me up for that. But that's pretty much where we're looking on FanDuel. All right. For me, my personal core still sits at this currently. Running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. Wide receiver, now I'm coring a cheapie. It was Dimitri Stanley on Thursday. It still is Dimitri Stanley. We had such success with a Colorado receiver with Tyson last week. Stanley, of course, used to be with Colorado. I'm playing up that Colorado connection for good luck. I'm a very superstitious guy. You guys know that about me to a fault. I know it has no bearing on anything, but I am going to Dimitri Stanley at 3.8. Give me some of that Cyclones offense. I clearly can't fit Xavier Hutchinson at his price in there. Stanley has been targeted 5+ times in every single game since week 1. Hasn't turned them into great production. 3 for 19, 6 for 90. That was great. 5 for 44, 2 for 17, 5 for 81, 4 for 55, 2 for 9, and then that 1 for 17 in week 1, which was, of course, a blowout non-D1, and he didn't have to play a lot. So we do have, 1, 2, 3, 4 games where he's been over 9 fantasy points at 3.8. 9 fantasy points is phenomenal. We want 30, damn near 30 like we got from Tyson last week. There's going to be an opportunity for that to happen. Oklahoma State's defense has become almost as bad, if not worse, than the Sooners. I think Decker's going to be able to throw the ball a little bit here. Everyone's hyper-focused on Norton, who, if Brock's out, is a fine play, clearly. But I think Decker's going to take this opportunity to huck it around a little bit. And that defensive attention that gets put on to Xavier Hutchinson really helps Jalen Noel, really helps Dimitri Stanley. Stanley's target share is just very solid. We need value. He's not a guy that I'm going to sit here and definitively say, yes, you need to play him like I did with Tyson last week. But I just need that salary savings, and I love the matchup. So Stanley is my core wide receiver. Now, quarterback, who's my core? It was Tanner Mordecai. Boring, I know. Have to play him in this matchup. He threw for 9 touchdowns. He scored 10, record-breaking stuff here. He's kind of, the DFS community salty with him. He's had some rough games when he's been on the slate, and for him, rough games, 298 or 302 touchdowns. He's the play. I mean, obviously, and this is not a me saying to fade him, because I'm probably looking at trying to play him too. But I think my core quarterback and my favorite quarterback on this slate at this moment with 45 minutes to lock I'm all in on Riley Leonard of Duke going up against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has been a team that's been just destroyed by the run. Dual threat quarterbacks especially have gotten to them. We know Israel Abanikanda had the record-breaking game against them, but we're seeing a lot of dual threat type of quarterbacks really give them a hard time, and I think that this is a spot for Leonard where he could put up 30+. Last game, going up against Georgia Tech, Zach Piron, who ended up starting for them, I don't know a lot about him, and I don't. He threw for 250 and a touchdown. He also rushed for 70 yards and a touchdown. I think that's a nice floor. The week before that against NC State with, Leary out and Jack Chambers starting and being ineffective, they went to MJ Morris, who threw for, 270 and 3, rushed for only 12 yards, but he is a dual threat guy. He just was having so much success through the air. Tyler Van Dyke threw for 350 and 2 against them. And then, of course, Drake May, in that game, he when they played, it was 41-10. He threw for 360 and 3. He rushed for 73 and 2. So this is a spot. No one's talking about Riley Leonard. His projected ownership is very low, considering how great this matchup is and considering how effective he's been. His PrizePicks total is only 18, which is way too low for what I think he's going to do. And I have projected ownership on 3 different sites, less than 6%. And he's scored 26, 34, 35, and 27 in 4 of his last 5 games. Go back a little further, 26, 32, 14, and 31. 7-9, it's the highest price he's ever been. It's a little bit high, yes, but this kid's cranking out threes. He is rushing with very electric-like skills. Like he's just there. The defenses aren't able to cover him. Virginia Tech's rush defense is going to be totally befuddled. And if they do try to focus on the run there against Duke, he's going to have the opportunity to throw the ball a little bit more. And yes, most of his games he's been sitting around 130 to 150 for passing yardage. However, he did throw for 324 against Kansas, threw for 328 against Temple, threw for 250 against North Carolina, and 240 against Northwestern. So he does have the capability to throw the football around. He's just a much better runner. Rushing quarterbacks rack up fantasy points. That's basic CFB DFS 101. All right, so Riley Leonard, drawing a line in the sand and playing Riley Leonard. If you only want one quarterback, it's Riley Leonard, but I'm probably going to go Leonard and Mordecai. That's where I stand at the moment. Running backs, I'm doing all I can to fit Gibbs and Blake Corum. At wide receiver, I'm playing Dimitri Stanley. I'm probably not going to be able to fit Rashee Rice. It feels bad. I think he's probably close to a must-play as it gets at the wide receiver spot, but I'm still valuing the running back pay-ups over him. So I'm going to get my exposure to SMU if I'm playing Mordecai with a receiver to someone like Dylan Goffney, who's min price and has very high risk. Even at min price, he could put up 1 fantasy points. He has done quite well. 2 of his last 3 games, he's been especially involved, 20+ fantasy points. He caught a 44-yard touchdown and a 47-yard touchdown. Not a PPR guy. We're going to be looking for him to kind of, take the blow the doors off and bust one downfield. He certainly can. Just be advised, we could have a 1-catch 5-yard performance, or we could have a 4-catch 150-yard and a touch performance. Clearly, I'm hoping for that one at the $3K price tag, but he's not going to hurt me if he doesn't, perform that well. We need to make sure that we have realistic expectations when it comes to these value plays. Dimitri Stanley and Dylan Goffney into my main lineup. This is going to be either a tilting day or I'm going to feel very, very good about things. All right. Let's see what people are saying. Let's go out and see. All right. All right. Tony Mathis of West Virginia sounds like he's going to be good to go. We know CJ Donaldson is out for West Virginia. This is a fantastic spot to target West Virginia. We know going up against Oklahoma, there's some serious value in betting them. They were plus 7.5 at home. Love it. Mathis, 5K on DraftKings coming in there. Going to start, I would suspect, all systems go, 18 carries as a floor. He's going to have to share a little bit with Justin Johnson. Justin Johnson probably, 10 to 14 carries. So a little bit of a split backfield, but No CJ Donaldson to take any carries. They're both priced cheap. Mathis 5K, Johnson 4.6. I think they're excellent options. I don't think I'm going to be able to get them into my main build just yet. However, at the moment, my 3 wide receivers are looking like Stanley Goffney and Seti Tillman, who's at 6.5. I think that's a really advantageous price for him. If I want to come off of Levine, I can go to Mathis there, dump down my wide receiver further, play 3 value wide receivers, roll the dice a little bit, and hope that Mathis, Corum, and Gibbs just go completely apeshit, score multiple times, 150 plus yards. On paper, that can work, but we know that the games aren't won, and on paper, they're on the field. So that's kind of where my head is at there. Still looking like KJ Jefferson news is up in the air a little bit. We know for Ohio State, Travion Henderson is looking like a no-go. JSN, obviously, looking like a no-go. The Buckeyes, man, they just can't get healthy. I think that's what's going to drive the ownership so heavily to Harrison and Igbuka. And when I say heavily, I don't mean like 70% like we've seen on some of these slates in the past. I'm talking more like 15 to 18%, which on a 14-game slate is really quite high. And Chip Trainum is a GTD also. Every time this happens with Ohio State, it's like, do we want to play Dallin Hayden? I played Dallin Hayden a couple of weeks ago. What was it against Michigan State in week 6? He did have 14 carries for 70 yards. Last week, he ended up having only 2 carries despite no Henderson. He's 3.2. He's not a play unless you have multiple lineups that you're going with. But you don't want to get caught messing around like that when you have Levine for 3.4. Kamar Wheaton, I'd rather play knowing that he's going to get a few touches at the very least. And then, of course, on the LSU running back side, you have, multiple backs, but Josh Williams at 4.1 is at least in play. Arkansas's rush defense has been atrocious throughout SEC play. All right, I want to see what else we got going on here. KJ Jefferson is taking first team pregame snaps. So there is that. Sounds like he's going to give it a go. So no surprise there. Let's see what else is happening. Boom, boom. There you go. Okay, while we're waiting for any other news to come through, we are approximately 35 to 40 minutes away. Let's talk PrizePicks, see what's changed. There are a couple that I really quite liked. One was for Tommy DeVito, passing plus rushing yards, which is sitting there at 203.5 yards combo. That feels pretty strong. Purdue's defense is, especially in their secondary, is quite terrible. I think DeVito can get there. 170 to 180 and like 25 to 35 yards on the ground. I think that's a doable number for him. I love Riley Leonard over 240.5 combo plus passing plus rushing yards. That seems like a gimme against Virginia Tech. I'm all over him, hitting that one hard. And then there is the number for Bo Nix, which is 315.5 combo passing plus rushing. Playing my Huskies, he's going to end up getting just anything he wants. Their defense is not really great, and both defenses suck, actually. It's going to be a really high-scoring game, lots of offense. Michael Penix is 320.5 passing yards. It's 315 some places. The over there is good. The over on Roma Denzi's receiving yards is good. The over on Jalen McMillan's receiving yards is good. There's just a lot of fantasy goodness and prop betting opportunities there to hit. Let me see. And then there was a couple on the fantasy score side. I also really like Chris Rodriguez, who's at 17.5 fantasy points versus Vanderbilt. I like his over. I like JT Daniels over 16.5 fantasy points. I think he's going to end up hitting 20. Aiden O'Connell's passing yards for Purdue. He's in a tough matchup, yes, but that offense throws the ball a lot. Over 240.5 passing yards. Give me that all day. I think more often than not, he hits that number. And then the last one that I was really liking, let me just see if it changed real quick. I mentioned Riley Leonard, 18.5 fantasy points. Still love that. I think that is a hit. Tyjae Spears over 14.5 fantasy points, which is a good lead in. Didn't really talk about him. I do think getting Tulane exposure today makes a lot of sense between Pratt and Spears, whichever one you do decide to go with. He is somebody who has over 100 yards in 3 straight games, has been producing as both a rusher and a pass catcher, and just is an extremely overlooked guy. People just don't use him. All right, so that's the prize picks. Let's see. Recent record for what? Prize picks? Well, let's go into my tracker and I'll tell you. We are very, very transparent. We play who we say we're going to play, and we have prize picks trackers on ftndaily.com where you can see how we've done with our actual, prize picks plays. We calculate in the for flex plays and power plays. We actually indicate that in there as well. So let's see, week 10. Of course, my internet doesn't want to work. Week 9. So, a couple weeks ago, I had the Devin Achane over 100.5 rushing yards. That hit. Dedrick Parson over 10.5 fantasy points hit. And Titus Swin over 15.5 fantasy points hit. I think we missed on Israel Abanconda that week. I think he was at 21.5. I would have to double check on that one, but I know it was a 5-pick flex, and it did pay out. In week 8, that was a rough one. Spencer Sanders did not hit his fantasy point prop. Frank Harris didn't hit his passing prop. That was pretty tough, but we did hit a 3-pick power play, which was Jalen McMillan over 63.5 receiving yards, Caden Prescorn over 40.5, and Day Hunter over 14.5 fantasy points. So 65 to 70%, I would say. That's my kind of running each week total. We are up 18 or 17.5 units. You can see on the tracker there, 17.5 units there on prize picks since the beginning of the season, just playing strictly 3-pick to 2 to 3-pick power plays. And then we do throw in the occasional 5-pick flex play. All right. Betting wise, if KJ Jefferson's going to play the Arkansas plus 3.5, like I need to probably jump on that before it's too late. I also really like, you go down here, West Virginia's plus 8.5 now. I hadn't bet it yet. I'm glad I didn't because they were plus 7.5. I think they're going to cover. I like Duke to cover minus 10 as well. I might throw something on that. But the other one I'm really confident in, heavy on. Let's just make sure that we have the same one. Penn State minus 10.5. They did as well last week, minus 14. Maryland Terps have not been able to get their receiver room on the same page. They've had some injuries. Penn State, they suffered the losses to the big boys, but they are a very different animal when they're at home playing competition that's at an equal level or slightly below. Their defense is just Wreck-It Ralph style, and they have a really strong running game. So at home against Maryland, I see them scoring, 14 more than Maryland. So I like the minus 10.5 there. That is one that I'm fairly heavy on and going to have a lot of variety of bets there. That includes that. There was also a total that seemed extremely low to us. We talked about on the show. Let me see if I can locate that one now. Covering college basketball, covering college football, raising kids, it's just everything's a blur. Iowa State, Oklahoma State. The total is 48. Oklahoma, I think Iowa State could score like 35 in this one, maybe even 40. So we just need to get a touchdown or two from Oklahoma State. So I'm taking the over 48 on that one. Kamar Wheaton warming up. Kamar Wheaton. I'm telling you guys right now, this is going to be a game where Kamar Wheaton goes off. I just have such a strong feeling about it. I don't know. I just feel like Levine's still going to be good. I just think they're going to end up splitting. And that's going to be that. All right. I'm going to split exposure. I think that's the way to go. That is the way to go. Fake to ask is any super value receivers. Well, I'm on Dimitri Stanley. I'm going to keep saying that wrong because I'm trying to say words at once. He just seems like a pretty nice play there. Dylan Goffney at 3K, like any of the SMU guys that are cheap, all of them are quite good. So I think we're at a good stopping point here. I have multiple lineups I'm trying to finalize. But just to recap, core wise, Riley Leonard, I'm drawing the line in the sand there. I'm still going to probably play a lot of Tanner Mordecai, but Riley Leonard is going to go off today. I think we can get away with taking multiple value wide receivers between Stanley, Goffney, and paying up at running back. So my theme of the slate is to play Riley Leonard, pay up at running back, pay down at wide receiver. I will see you guys at the top. I will be back Monday night at 9 p.m. Pacific to talk some college basketball for the Tuesday slate. Usually Tuesday slates are going to be pretty big. They call it Big Tuesday. It's 8 games, not a huge one, but they're going to start having some big prize pools, and I will be back there. Mike Kutry will be joining me on a lot of the Monday night shows, and we'll be chalking it up and talking about college basketball season. So you guys will see me back here Monday night, and then Thursday night next week, 9 p.m. PST with Jake to cover the week main slate on Saturday, and then Q&A session Saturday morning again as well. Doesn't stop. We continue. We're going to win lots of money today. Thank you very much, guys, for your continued support. Hit me in the Discord or in Twitter DMs if you have further questions after this. We're out.